Okay. Well, welcome everybody to our October installment. It's hard to believe it's the last quarter of the year. And 2020, a new decade, as a matter of fact, is fast approaching for all of us. But we are keeping with our theme of kind of self-improvement and building into ourselves with our guest today, Tim Collins. So Tim is at Real Estate Webmasters. I'm going to let him explain a little bit about what he does, but Tim and I kind of became friends because of our both of our sort of fanatical interests and intrigue into our health and wellness and things like that. And it's been something that I think is, we'll go into it here in just a minute, but something that I think is lacking very much so, especially in the real estate industry. And so, it was really nice and refreshing to find somebody that was really committed to it. So Tim, tell the folks kind of a little bit about yourself, what you do, and why you're interested in fitness.
Yeah, so I work at Real Estate Webmasters with the world's leading custom designer for real estate websites, and I work with our clients who stem from all the way from sort of individual agents who are aspiring to be great or already are great, all the way up to large enterprise customers and sort of everybody in between. So I get to see and experience lots of people who are on lots of different places in their journey in terms of work and life, and I find that super interesting. And my own life kind of, now it's almost probably 9 years ago. I'm trying to think when it was. So it's 2011. In 2011, I was living a bit of a different life. So I was 40 pounds heavier in weight. I was drinking a lot more alcohol. I was eating a lot more crappy food and traveling a lot with my job, as a lot of us do in this industry, or a slightly different industry at the time, but same kind of thing, selling technology. And I got up on stage one day to give a presentation to a group of people, and I had a panic attack. I had my first ever sort of monumental panic attack, and that I created the perfect storm. So I'd flown from Canada to London. I went out drinking, as often it's kind of like a badge of honor to go out and get absolutely slammed and then get up the next morning and still function. Like we did that for years and we thought we were great at it. On this occasion, it failed me. I woke up after going to bed at 2, probably. I woke up at 7 for my meeting. I went past the coffee shop, got a quadruple espresso, down that. So then I've got kind of, now I know because I've researched all of the science behind it, but I'm like, my alcohol's leaving my system. I got caffeine going in, I got sleep deprivation and jet lag and all these things. And I get up on stage and I can't explain the feeling, but I felt vertigo a little bit. So I felt like I was going to pass out, which doesn't feel nice. Yeah. And then the cold sweats kicked in, and this all happened in an instant. And all the people are sat there in the room looking at me going, what is wrong with him? Like, why is he not talking? I was like a broken robot or something. So that was the kind of origin story. And that really changed my life. Like that set me off in a lot of ways, in a bad way to start with, because then obviously the imposter syndrome kicks in, and I spent a long time questioning who am I, and I shouldn't be here, and I'm a fraud. I even got to the stage where I contemplated suicide because things were just such a struggle across the board. And it's interesting timing for this conversation because yesterday was World Mental Health Day. So I then kind of did what a lot of people do. So I went to the doctor. The doctor very quickly said, hey, here's some medication, take these pills and you'll be fine. Right. Which is still today probably the default route for a lot of people. And I kind of took them for a few days and I was like, this just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like the solution to me I've got problems, and covering them up effectively by taking something to kind of deaden the pain. It just didn't feel right for me. So I stopped. And that was kind of the beginning of my health journey, both physical and mental health, because I started to look around and say, well, maybe if I eat better food, I'll feel better, right? That kind of, now based on what I know that nutrition and exercise fixes most ailments.
Yeah, absolutely.
Strangely, what we eat has a lot to do with how we feel. So I looked at my diet. I started exercising regularly. I started spending more time in nature. I changed my job at the time because I realized that that was a big source of my stress.
Mhm.
I moved from the East Coast to the West Coast because I wanted to be in a place that I loved living in. So I did a lot of, at the time people were like, oh my God, there's all these crazy changes. But they just felt intuitively like I needed to do them, So that was kind of how I got started on all this track in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think your experience is one that I imagine many of our listeners are nodding their heads or saying, wow, I feel this right now, whether you guys are in that space right now or you've been in that space. Many of us who are, I would say, extremely committed to our health and our well-being, I think it kind of is masked where many people on the outside looking in may feel like it's a vanity thing or
Mm,
it's a weight thing. And for many people, at least in my experience, those of us that are really truly committed to our health, it has very little to do with the number on the scale,
yeah.
and much more to do with kind of the overall, as you said, if you eat better, you feel better, and it really can fix a lot of other issues.
Hmm.
So in terms of the lifestyle too, in real estate, I'm sure you come across in general, I think for many of us, we kind of go on this rat race. So let's talk a little bit about, the time leading up to when you had that aha moment. I had a similar situation where I was getting some chest pains and I just wasn't
Yeah.
feeling right. And when I now looking back, look at the moments leading up to that, it's so much more than just, the night before. You have this
Yeah.
unique story of the night before, but it's really the years before where we say, I'll get to the gym tomorrow, or
Mm,
I'll eat healthy after conference season, or, I'll this is the last time I'm going to go through the drive-through. I'm going to bring my lunch to work tomorrow, kind of thing.
yeah.
So talk a little bit about, how you feel like that mindset shift was able to happen besides for just that aha moment.
Hmm. So it's interesting. I actually subsequently went on to start a podcast about anxiety. It's called The Anxiety Podcast. So if anybody wants to look that up, it's on iTunes and Google and everywhere else, The Anxiety Podcast. But one of the things I came to realize as a result of now I've done 350 episodes of that, and I've interviewed experts around the world and just done a lot of work around mental and physical health, is that anxiety is actually, and stress in general, and even depression to some extent, is a result of a lack of alignment in our lives. So if, the analogy I always use is if you're driving a car and you don't maintain the car and you don't ever put air in the tires and you don't, get it serviced regularly, eventually it starts breaking down. And if you leave it long enough, it'll stop working, or the
Right.
steering wheel will start shaking, or you'll get some output as a result of that lack of alignment. And humans are exactly the same. So for me, it was kind of, the constant neglect of, and I went through the longest phase of where I did work out a little bit. I did the classic, like, I'm going to go to the gym 3 times a week because that means I can eat whatever I want and I
Yeah.
can drink on Thursday night, Friday night, and Saturday night, and I'll still hit my goals. And that's just not true.
And it's
Um,
not true health either.
yeah, it doesn't work. You're like, fueling a Lamborghini with like diesel, like they just don't run on that, So yeah, that was kind of like a big, it took a long time. This is years of an evolution. So if you're sat there watching this thinking like, yeah, that's where I am now. Yeah, it's a lot of effort and time and education to kind of bring yourself around to finding something that works for you and is something that's sustainable, because those are the main things. It's really, if you see people and you're like, wow, that guy's in fantastic shape, or he seems to be happy, or he's got a great lifestyle, they've probably been working on that for most of their lives, right?
Absolutely.
Takes a long
Absolutely.
time. So for me, it was like grabbing, a foot long sub at lunchtime, thinking that was a healthy option because it had some salad on it or something.
Right.
And then I drive home in traffic and sit in a commuter situation and grab a candy bar at the gas station. And then I go home and I was so tired, I tuck my kids in and just have a few glasses of wine just to like take the edge off and put myself to sleep, like every day.
Yeah.
So that combined with like the general stresses of life that I still face with, relationships and children and work and all the other stuff, it's just unsustainable. Right. And so now what I find through through coaching I do and work I've done is that, you know, a lot of people say, I just don't have time. And that is, unfortunately, that's the biggest untruth in all of this, because
Right.
you have time for what you want to do. So you can either watch like the new season of Riverdale for 3 hours, or you could spend, you know, a well executed 50 minutes working out, you know,
Yeah.
instead,
Right.
and still have an hour to watch TV. But,
Yeah.
you know, it to really sort of make it very simple, in our lives we are the result of what we put our mind towards, right? Or what we put our actions towards. So if you want to be wealthy, then you would be reading Richard Branson's autobiography and learning about finances and reading up on the stock market, and you would probably get better results. If you want health and fitness, you're going to be exercising and considering what food you eat and looking at, you know, what type of nutrition best suits your body and your lifestyle, and acting accordingly. And so that's, you know, that's just something which took a long time for me to get to. And I tried all the shortcuts. I tried the, you know, I've obviously still do some intermittent fasting, but I tried the Tim Ferriss diet. I tried the cabbage soup diet. I've tried all these things which short term you lose a few pounds.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we see the phenomenon of New Year's resolutions being a bit of a
Yes.
fallacy, because everybody goes crazy for a month and then nobody continues. And that, for me, who's somebody who loves getting results from stuff I do, is probably the hardest thing to get my head around, is that I have to do this forever. It's never
Right.
over. It never
Right.
stops. How can it?
Right.
Otherwise you would just recede back to where you were before. So, you know, coming to terms with the fact that this is a lifetime commitment, I think is huge.
Well, and I think too, like so my wife and I recently started doing keto.
Yeah.
And you and Morgan Carey were a big inspiration behind it. And I remember looking at both you and Morgan and thinking to myself, like, I don't know how that's sustainable. I've got two
Mm.
little kids. I mean, I know you guys have kids too, but I was like, I mean, like, I don't know, short of cooking 7 different meals every night, how would I do this? And so I kind of eased into it.
Yeah.
Because I have this honest to God feeling when it comes to habits of, you know, you can have habits that are driven by an outcome. So I want to lose 25 pounds. That's an outcome. And the reason why, like you say, many people regress is you lose the 25 pounds and you say, well, that's great. Now I can go
Yeah.
and eat whatever I
Woo!
want and
Cheat day.
and then all of a sudden you're back to, I need to lose 25 pounds. And I think that yo-yo is something that many professional adults or many adults in general kind of go through. And it really is what you're talking about, this mindset shift. And changing a mindset happens over time. So it becomes less of, you know, I'm going to go for a run so I can work off that sandwich I ate earlier, to I'm going to be a runner, or
Yeah.
I'm going to, you know, lift weights. Like I'm going to be that person. I want to be someone who goes to the gym. And once you kind of view it in that way, that mindset shift becomes a lot easier, I believe. And so, for instance, in my case, when I was starting keto, I was thinking, how will I reduce carbs to that small of an amount? And so I kind of eased into it, and I just reduced my carbs in chunks, and
Mm-hmm.
now I've gotten to a point where I can do keto, and it's not like a true shock to my system, and I'm not saying this sucks. And I figured out, if I go out or if I'm, you know, on the run, what I can and cannot eat. And I think so much of that, you mentioned earlier, you've done so much research about the science behind things. So much of it is just an education process,
Mm.
wouldn't you say?
Yeah, for sure. And I've been keto since before it was cool. So I think I started doing it in I've been doing it 5 years anyway.
Oh, wow.
And so when I first looked at it, I was like, there is no way, like, so I've been in the mindset of most people where I was like, there's no way you could do that. You can't eat pasta or pizza or bread or sandwiches, or, you know, all of those things were just like crazy to me to give up. And so the first time around looking at it, I actually said, I can't do that. And I instead did paleo, which is getting there, right? It's closer. It's whole foods. It's good stuff. And then eventually, and I think this is natural, and I'm still doing it today in other ways, is that when you get to achieve a certain level of fitness or attain something, you're like, oh, I wonder if I could refine it a tiny bit more and make it even better, right? We're always looking for ways to kind of improve the process, whether that's workout or food, or going to the conference and not getting drunk every night, but saying like, I'm going to pick one night and enjoy myself, and the other nights I'm going to lock it down and and take care of myself. Right. So, yeah, so I think, finding something that works for you. I'm not somebody who goes out saying like the way I eat is the way everybody should eat, because it's significant willpower. It's a lot of learning what works for you. But I think what you said is perfect, which is you can ease into it and gradually, dial things down and figure it out. And now I'm at the stage where if I'm going out to a restaurant, I'll usually look at the menu online before I go so I can pick out what I want. I'm very comfortable with anywhere I go to eat saying I don't want the rice or fries, just give me extra vegetables. Like, people are getting much more accommodating with that kind of stuff. But what I do feel is that, like, energy wise, I have so much more. It's funny because for years gluten was definitely an issue for me and I never realized it. But when I went keto and effectively stopped eating bread, a rash that I'd had for my whole life on my arms disappeared. My asthma went away. My allergies cleared up, like lots of things, which turns out they were like systemic inflammation, and seemingly how could that be connected? But it totally is. So I just think a lot of the things that we consume and have on a regular basis are impacting the way we feel so much. And I used to be the person who said, right, coffee in the morning. I used to work close to a gas station from my office, so I'd walk across the road and get a Red Bull or Monster Energy drink in the afternoon just to like power through the day. And I get it. Like in real estate land, if you look at realtors and brokers, a lot of the time it does get to be a bit manic because you're chasing opportunities. You're trying to get the contract done at the last minute or submit an offer or meet a new client. And so it would be easy to fill a day with activities and not carve out the 1 hour that you need for yourself. And for instance, today, people at work think it's funny, but I got my boiled eggs are ready to go. I've got my I just cooked extra food last night, so I've already got like grilled chicken breasts and vegetables that I made. And it's slow and it's a long journey to get there, but it works, right? Over time, this stuff does make a difference. And yeah, people will say that's strange, but I kind of like being different now because I'm just used to it. So
yeah, and it's true. And I think what's so interesting, and part of why I wanted to have you on is, so I work with a personal trainer once a week and he writes my workouts. So I do them by myself without him throughout the week and then with him once a week. And he, when I started keto, had said to me, and again, you guys, keto is not for everybody. There's many different ways that you can eat out there. It works for me. It works for Tim, but like everybody's body is different. So you may respond to different things a different way. By no means am I saying you have to go keto, but he made the point and he said, your body changes in the kitchen, your muscles change at the gym. Yeah. And when he said that, it just kind of clicked with me because I think so many of us are sort of doing it backwards, where we're saying, okay, I'm going to do what I'm going to do that's convenient throughout the day in the kitchen, but I'm going to go to the gym to keep my body in check and things like that. And the impacts that a lot of this food has on our bodies, just health-wise, chemical-wise, all of these imbalance-wise, you could run all day and it won't make a difference. Yeah. And I think that is something that we don't all think that way. Yeah.
No, and that's the thing. Like, if you look at like competition people who are trying to get very low body fat, like their diet is really where it's done. They might do some extra cardio to burn another couple of hundred calories. But if you think about how easy it is to eat a couple of tablespoons of peanut butter, which you thought was 1 tablespoon, it's actually 2. And that's like 250 calories. That'll take you like 45 minutes on a treadmill to get off. Like it just doesn't even compare. And then you're tired and fatigued and you feel like you deserve more food because you've done the work, right? So I find that, very interesting. I also find that cravings change over time for me as well. So a lot of the time in office environments, definitely in real estate brokerages, definitely at conferences and places you travel to, but somebody's going to show up at the office and have like a dozen donuts, right? And they're going to have like candies and be giving stuff out all the time. And people, I'm always like, no, I'm good. And I'll grab my beef jerky or down a boiled egg or something. And people are like, but don't you miss it? And to start with, maybe in the early days I did, but now if you said like, you can have anything you want what do you want? For me, it isn't pizza and ice cream anymore. My taste has just changed over time. I'd probably go to like a really nice barbecue joint and have some like pulled pork and some ribs and stuff.
Yeah.
I do have like a weakness for like homemade sourdough with peanut butter on it. I'd probably go
Yeah.
for something a little bit different like that. But it's definitely not what you would think. I'm not desperate to go to McDonald's. Like I really could not bother with that again and be fine. And if I did go, I'd just say, give me the burgers and save the buns. Right. So,
Absolutely. I think that you're so right. Your first off, your tastes change over time, but also once you go through this education process, at least for me, I look at things on a menu now that I perhaps would have ordered either because I thought it was a healthy option or I just have grown up eating. And so I thought,
mhm,
why not? And now I think to myself, like, I could order that. That sounds good, but it's really just also not worth it.
yeah,
Like, and part of that is because I work
totally.
so hard on my diet throughout the week and things like that. And I'm working as hard as I am in the gym, where now I just feel like it's a different mindset of, yeah, that sounds great, but is it really
Mhm,
worth blowing my whole day
yeah.
by to have, that bread or that sort of stuff? Does it? And what I've found too, and I'm early on in keto, what I found too is I have not, and I know different people handle this a different way. I haven't really looked for replacements of food.
Hmm.
Like, I don't try to have, keto bread on a burger. I just
No.
eat the burger patty with a slice of cheese and I'm happy. And then what
Yeah.
I've realized is the things that I was eating, I grew up eating. I'm
Yeah.
used to eating a burger with a bun because that's how it was always given to me. But without the bun, I'm really not missing a whole lot.
Yeah.
And I'm totally fine. And actually, I've come to really prefer like a lettuce wrapped burger or something like that. Like,
Hmm.
I like the taste of that better than having the bun. And so it's interesting. You're right. Your tastes do change over
Yeah.
time. And I do think it's an education thing. So with your diet changes and your fitness changes, one of the things that I think you've done that's really remarkable in real estate, because in real estate, as in many other industries, but real estate specifically, our lifestyle really tends to suffer when we get business, just as you say, because we're
Hmm.
chasing the deal, because you really have to be prepared food wise if you're not going to go through that drive through. I, like you, keep beef jerky in my car with
Yeah.
me. I keep bars with me that I know I need to have. Those bars, by the way, you should check the nutrition facts. Some of them are great,
Oh
some of
yeah.
them not great. Um,
Most of
but
them not.
yeah, most of them
Yeah.
not. But it's really interesting when you kind of have to prep that way. But what you've done that I think is really remarkable is you've created a community within real estate of people who really care about their health. So talk to us a little bit about your community and maybe how folks can join as well.
Yeah, so this was kind of like just something like intersection of two things I love, right? So real estate and our whole industry being one, and then also health and fitness and mental health and everything involved in that on the other side. And I've come across lots of people like you who have the kind of the niche, those two niches kind of joined together, which creates like a super niche or something. But then you have people who there's networking opportunities, but they're also going through similar things in their lives whilst also striving for health and fitness. So I started something called the Real Estate Health Club, which is essentially a Facebook group. Anybody who's watching this, please, is welcome to join. There's lots of people in there who are at different stages in their journey. Some people starting out. Even last night, I was talking to somebody in there, and they, since I don't know whether I'm not going to take 100% responsibility because they've done the work. But since joining the group, they've lost like 26 pounds,
Wow.
which is really cool to see. But yeah, it's really just a place to check in and have the biggest thing for a lot of people is accountability. So making a public declaration of I'm going to get in the gym after work every day or in the morning before work or do some things and then check in with other people and see what they're up to is a good way to stay connected and a good way to stay accountable. So the Real Estate Health Club is really about that. It's a place to check in. I also found that like posting loads of pictures of me working out, although I still do on social media, pisses some people off. So here you can do more of that, and that's kind of what it's for, right?
Yeah. And
Um,
what's so interesting too about the group that I've personally benefited from is, just like you say, the posting of the pictures on your regular feed maybe isn't for everybody, but it's hard work a lot of the time in what we're doing in the gym, and it's huge personal victories. And not always do our social circles in general want to celebrate that if they aren't in that space.
Yeah.
So I thought that, for instance, last night you had talked about, your heavy deadlifts. Like I've put in when I've hit a personal record, and it's a big deal for me, but maybe some of my social circles don't really get that it's a big deal because they may not be in the gym. But I feel, you guys, as he says, regardless of the stage you're in, I've found it to be an incredibly supportive environment in terms of celebrating each other's tries and wins, as well as that accountability. And the other element that I don't know if you've utilized it yet, Tim, but I have started doing is those of us that in conference season, as I put it, Tim's right that it's the natural inclination to, go out and party and then wake up the next morning and things like that. It's a really useful network to also find people to try and stay on track during those times. So I believe other people have worked out with one another when they're at the same conference. You find a lot of people saying, hey, I'm going to this event. Is anybody else going to go? And there's kind of group workouts going, and more group accountability in person. So I think that's also a really valuable asset to the people that are members, because it can be really hard at events and when you're out of your day-to-day to stay on track, especially in the earlier stages of kind of your commitment.
Yeah, I think even for me, somebody who's like pretty religious about working out, sometimes when I'm having a bad day, if I see you've posted one of your, crazy cycling efforts in there or something, and then it's like, I've got to go. Like it gets you out of your seat and into action because you feel like other people are doing it. And I think some of the best posts when people are like, I felt like terrible today because I was so tired, but I still went and got it done. And you realize that there really are sort of no excuses. And to your point, a lot of the time when you do start working out and getting into health and fitness, you are going to hold a mirror up effectively to other people and push their buttons a bit. And they say, why are you working out so much? Why do you care what you eat? Are you better than me? Like, are you trying to be, you're triggering other people because they know in their heart that they probably should be making an effort as well. But they don't. So you really have to kind of be prepared to develop a bit of a thick skin and just focus on the stuff that's important with you. And as Jim Rohn famously says, you are the, 5 people you spend most time with or surround yourself with. So being in something like that allows you to see other people who are, at work and business achieving their goals, but still finding, the hour or two a day to invest in themselves. And that, at the end of it all we really have, and the most valuable thing we have is our, our mind and our physical beings to kind of live in, right? Like that's what's going to make us be healthy. I want to be healthy when I'm 60 and lifting weights and 70 and still doing it. So,
well, and what you say is exactly it. It's not about, I want to be this weight when I'm 70 or in this shape. Like you want to be healthy. It becomes a full, a full circle thing of, I want to feel good when I'm running with my kids and playing. I want to feel capable of doing that and not sore or out of breath. So I think that's important. So Tim, before I let you go, tell us if there's somebody that's watching or listening that's saying to themselves, I feel like what they're talking about makes sense. I feel like I've sort of hit this wall. What would you suggest is the first step for somebody that's kind of trying to get their health in order?
Yeah, I think the first thing, there's the first thing is really education, right? So I think for me and the way I digest information, and if people want to connect with me, please do on Facebook. I'm sure my details will be in here somewhere, but connect with me and I'll put you in touch with some resources to look at. But I love podcasts because I got one. So I would start listening, then when you're in the car between showings or you got some time on your hands, you can start soaking up this information and they become your virtual mentors, right? You can start learning things from these different areas. So it'd be to, start with a couple of outlines, an outline of what you can improve in your diet. Again, I wouldn't necessarily pick something specific, but if you're eating the general stuff, then the first thing I always say to people is like, start eating real food, like get rid of the boxes. If you look up the Whole30 diet, then that's not a bad place to start, because that just talks about meat and vegetables, and you can still eat rice and bread and that kind of stuff initially, but it gets you off of all the prepackaged stuff and the things which are super convenient. So that, and then also picking some form of exercise and just start. I've worked with lots of people who just said, right, I just want you to start going for a walk 3 or 4 times a week. Like, start something that you can consistently build upon, and then you can decide if you want to do CrossFit or lift heavy weights or bodybuilding type stuff, or running or cycling or sports or whatever. Like, I still play hockey because it's my sort of true love. And it's funny because I'm now 41 years old, and I'm better. I'm in better shape physically now than when I was 19, and I was actually doing it as my full-time endeavor, which is kind of weird. But
that's crazy. No, I love that. And that's such a good point of, it's all about what you are doing consistently. So you mentioned, for instance, most of you know that I'm a fairly big Peloton addict or avid Peloton rider, but I reached a point this spring where I was sort of dreading getting on the bike because I got a little bored with it, because I've been doing it over and over and over. And so that was when I enlisted a personal trainer to just kind of mix up my workouts and give me something else. And I think that's something that, when you're really committed to a healthy lifestyle, you see yourself kind of falling off of one thing and say, I need something so that I can re-engage. And you can do that with diet and exercise as well. So it's really valuable for me.
Yeah. And I said, the other thing, the final point on this is as well, that I think, cheat days are a bit of BS, because if you look at if you actually sat down and worked out the numbers, if you have a big cheat day every Saturday, it really undoes everything you've done in the whole week. But I go out, like I went to, I was in New York recently for the RIS CEO Media Exchange event. And one night we went to a baseball game, and I was like, you know what, tonight I'm just going to have whatever I want. So I had a few beers, albeit Michelob Ultra, but still, it's all good. I had a few beers. I had a burger with the bun.
Waters.
Yeah, exactly. They're like 35 ounces or something. They were good. But I had a burger with the bun, and it was amazing. And it was like a brioche bun. And then afterwards we went downtown New York to like a barbecue place, and I had ribs and all the things. And I was like, I was good. Like I really enjoyed that. And I've talked about this before, but I like to have this definition difference of fuel versus experience, right? So every day for me is fuel. I'm eating things to fuel my body to feel good, to perform. But once in a while, there's going to be an experience, which might be your birthday party or a wedding you attend or a really nice dinner at a really nice restaurant. So when you have an experience, then, indulge in the experience, but we don't need to have, crazy hyper palatable experiences in every meal we eat, which is unfortunately where a lot of things have gone.
We are as a society. Yeah. No, you make such a good point. As my trainer often tells me, have a cheat meal, don't have a cheat day, because in one meal, you're unlikely to untwine everything you've done that week. That's a great point. Do it all day. I mean, it really does add up fairly significantly. And once you start tracking that sort of stuff, it's fairly shocking, to be perfectly honest. Yeah. Well, Tim, thank you so much. You're such an inspiration to so many that are really trying to work towards a healthier lifestyle. I appreciate everything that you're doing in the real estate industry to put that forward. You guys definitely look at the Real Estate Health Club on Facebook. I will put a link to it. It's an absolutely amazing community. I know that Tim is being genuine when he says reach out to him. I'll also include his contact in the link. But thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Guys, next month we'll be back with Jay Marks of Jay Marks Real Estate in Dallas, Texas. He's going to be talking to us about building a community in his local community. So a community within community. Should be really great. Can't wait to see you guys. I'll see you next month. Bye.